Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the 3 of 7 podcast. I wanted to start off and let you guys know I am going to start releasing a series of private lessons to the team members that support this podcast on Patreon. And this is a series of lessons that I have written out and really thought through the tools that I have used that have helped me get through tough times in life and achieve my goals. So I hope you guys enjoy those. I will release the first lesson today, and that will be at patreon.com/3 of 7. That's spelled out 3 of 7. I'll link the Patreon account in the show notes to this episode. So let me know what you think if you're on there. There'll be short lessons, 10 minutes or less, and fired up to hear your feedback. Next thing I want to leave you guys with, refuse to live your life in fear. There's a difference between being smart and cautious and being afraid. There's a difference between being brave and being reckless. Know that line. Take advantage of every day as the gift that it is, and carry on. We've got an awesome episode coming up with April Harmon. April has one of the most powerful stories of faith and endurance that I've ever heard in my entire life. So give it a listen. Hope you enjoy. Without further ado, here she is, Miss April Harmon.
And for all of us is, when we're in the middle of those trials, when we're in the middle of the struggle, is to not get so caught up on the things that we don't know, right? But to focus on the things that we do know. And that the truth, is so important to cling to when you feel like you're drowning in all of the unknown.
All right, April. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show today and for having the courage to share your story. I think it's absolutely amazing that you're able to come on and that you've been able to look back on your experience and at least try to I guess make something good, see some lessons in it. And that's kind of what I've tried to do in my life too. And we just can't thank you enough for coming on and for the good work that you're doing right now with Strong Souls in your community. It looks like an awesome thing, and I definitely want to hear more about that later on. Well, we'll jump right into this, April. And your story, when Jeffrey reached out to me and he kind of reminded me, I remember you and know a little bit about your story because Jeff and I were working together out in Fort Chaffee, kind of when you were going through this. And, I can remember quite a few times, me and Jeff would be out in the field and we'd get down on our knees together and just pray for you and your family and for your strength. But I don't think that I understood quite I know I didn't understand quite the depth and the details of kind of what you guys went through, April. And, I'd love to hear it firsthand from you, wherever you want to start.
Sure.
Just walk us through kind of what happened during, and that would have been 2014?
Yeah, so Brielle was born in 2011.
Mm-hmm.
And up until that point, like when I share this story, I always kind of, to preface it and say, like, up until that point of my life, everything kind of just seemed to go as I thought that it should, right? So you kind of look at your life and you all figure out, I'm gonna go to college, I'm gonna get married, I'm gonna have babies, and I'm gonna get a job, and everything was going kind of exactly how I thought it should, right? So Brielle was born on November 22nd, 2011.
Mm-hmm.
And for the full first year of her life, everything was perfect, right? So she did all the things that she should do. She was beautiful. Everything in life was going really, really well. And then at 17 months old, she got RSV and the flu at the same time. And, it made her really, really sick. But again, nothing that we thought we couldn't handle. So we took her to the Pittsburgh Children's Hospital, which is our closest children's hospital. And, we thought she would just need some IV fluids, some extra care, and then we would be on our way. And some complications happened while we were there. I noticed that she wasn't, feeding herself like she used to be able to, right? So her eye-hand coordination kind of got a little bit funky, and she would try to bring something up to her mouth and totally miss it. And I mentioned it to the doctors, and, some of them, because we had a whole team of doctors on our case. Pittsburgh is a teaching hospital, right? So there's always a lot of people in the room, and some of them just thought that it was from her being worn down from the flu and from RSV, and just that she was weak. But there were some other doctors that were very concerned. So they decided to do an MRI on her. And still at this point, we're like, oh, nothing's going to show, very hopeful, very positive. And then I can still vividly remember the doctors coming back in her room as she's waking up from the anesthesia that she had to go under for the MRI. And it just was, it's like a scene from a movie, right? Everybody's flying around you and you're kind of zoning out. Is this really happening? And they were throwing all kinds of things at us, right? But essentially it had showed that Brielle had a stroke on her brain stem, and could have been all kinds of things. So they're rushing around. We're taking her up to the PICU, the pediatric ICU at this point, and just really not sure what the heck is happening. Yeah. And so we get up there, and they decide they're going to treat her for Guillain-Barré syndrome. And she actually that evening lost all movement from her neck down. So really scary to sit and watch, but praise God, she responded to that treatment. And by the next morning, she's moving her arms again, and she's moving her legs again. And things are looking really, really great for us, as great as they could. So we're staying positive again, hopeful, and it's traumatic and it's hard, but we're still, trusting in God's plan, and everything's going to work out. And, all of a sudden we went from them thinking it was Guillain-Barré syndrome to meeting with a bunch of genetic specialists, and they have all these other potential causes of things that could have happened. And so they decided to run all of these tests, right? And at the same time, we're still just holding on to hope that it was the Guillain-Barré syndrome, a one-time thing. And they moved us from the PICU. She's recovering. She's doing really well, back to the main floor. And then from the main floor to a pediatric rehab facility that's still in Pittsburgh. And we were there for a little while as she was regaining her strength. And, these tests that they take a while to come back, right? So they're coming back fine. And then we got home from the hospital. She seemed like she was doing great. Everything was going back according to my plan that I had for my life. And we got the call that June. So that would have been June 2012, with the bad news that one of the genetic tests that they had done had come back positive. And we found out that Brielle had a mitochondrial disease, and specifically Lee's disease. And I can remember talking to the doctor, and she said, you please don't get on Google and go research this for yourself. Wait until you come in and speak with somebody. But I had never heard of it before. And of course you're going to get online and try to learn about it. Right. So I did as much of my own research as I could. And I learned that, life was going to be really hard for Brielle. I learned that the diagnosis was fatal for her. And, at that point, everything changed. Right. So we went through the sickness and the illness, still with all this hope in our hearts to find out that, we were going to be lucky if we could have her for 6 years with us. So at that point in your life, you kind of realize what's important. And I feel like, my foundation of faith, it was there, but man, it was about to get challenged, and it was about to get rocked harder than I could have ever imagined, happening in my life. Growing up as a church kid, right? Going in to church every Sunday, every Wednesday, going through the motions. But really, truly, I believed all of those things, right? Because my parents told me to, or my pastor said it was true. And all of a sudden, it was like that wasn't enough anymore for me. So I can remember talking to my family and telling everybody what was going on. And, part of the mitochondrial disease with Lee's disease specifically, we had to do our best to keep Brielle healthy. So we had to do our best to keep her away from, outside germ sources. So I quit my job, which was an incredible gift my husband was able to give to me to take on full responsibility financially for our family. And I was able to be with Brielle every single day, and to focus on her. I can just remember telling my family, like, look, I can't deal with anything negative right now in my life. I have to have all things positive. And it was just a shift in my mindset that really, I think, helped. And so looking down the road for us, I didn't know what the future held for Brielle. I didn't know how many years I was going to have with her. All I knew was that each day I had, right, I was going to make it the best day for her that I possibly could. And it was hard, right? I cried myself to sleep for weeks. Was just sick in my stomach. My heart was breaking, and she had no clue what was going on, right? So you have to stay positive for her, and you can't let those emotions show when you're spending time with her. You have to lift her up and to build her up. And so it was a shift in my life where I said, I'm going to start taking control of the thoughts that I allow to enter into my mind, right? Things creep in, but I'm not going to let them stay there. And so I started making these little changes to stay positive the best that I could. So
Yeah,
really tough. Yeah.
April, I just want to ask you real quick, because you hit on a question that I was just about to ask you. Is you talked about coming to your family and telling them, hey, I need to be surrounded with positivity. And my question specifically was going to be, what were the things that you kind of implemented to make those changes, not only in your home but in your relationships and that way, like specific things? What kind of helped you, I guess, maintain that positive mindset through this trial?
Sure. So, anything that was negative, right? Like if people were going to bring to me like talk bad about somebody, or, present me with, oh, this is what's going on in the world, and it's, so crappy and whatever. I don't want to have anything to do with that. We're going to spin it, right? Anything that comes in that's negative, you need to spin it when you're talking about it around me, or, be really careful about the things that you say. And, I started only listening to Christian music for a while. To this day, I listen to anything, but that at that point in my life, I needed that positivity. And I started really diving back into scripture, and, reading my Bible and being really intentional about my prayer life and prayer journaling. And it's been so cool for me at that point in my life to go back and to see not the way that I wanted them to be, right, but prayers were answered along the way. And so that was really important for me too. And listening, podcasts weren't super big then at that point, but I had access to sermons, right? So I would get on YouTube and I would watch Stephen Furtick, and I would watch, guys like Andy Stanley, and I would just make sure to surround myself with as much positivity as I possibly could.
Yep, that's awesome, April. So it's essentially you took control over what you were feeding yourself with and what you were allowing to come into your presence, and making sure that the people that you were going to be around were going to be respectful of kind of what you needed in your life at that point. So, no, that's awesome. And I didn't mean to interrupt your story. I just wanted to nail down those specific things for our listeners, because that's so important. Both those things, not only being conscious of the people that you surround yourself with, but being conscious of what you intentionally feed yourself with, as far as content and reading and things like that. So thank you for sharing that with us, April. I'll let you continue now. Sorry about that.
No, that's great. So after diagnosis, we made some changes to help Brielle too. One of the big ones was me staying at home, like I mentioned. And the other one was, really kind of isolating ourselves, especially during flu and cold season. And so we were just really, really careful, where we come from a family that's together all of the time. That was really difficult. So we had to say, hey, if anybody has like even a sniffle, a cold could have put her in the ICU for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month. And so we really had to start being really careful about that. In the wintertime, she and I were what we would call homebound. So we really wouldn't leave the house, right? Just to minimize the germs that we would allow in. And she did okay for a while. I mean, she was in and out of hospitals all the time. Anytime she had a fever, we had to rush her to the emergency room. We had this little specialized letter because certain things that work for normal kids didn't work for her. So, it was always kind of a little bit scary going in to an emergency room that we weren't comfortable with. We did decide to take her down to Florida for a winter to be able to at least get outside and things, right? Because in Pennsylvania, there's none of that in the wintertime, especially for a kid that's homebound and needs to stay healthy. So we did take her down to Florida, and it was such an incredible winter until she got sick, and she got really sick. We ended up in the ICU in Florida, away from her normal doctors, and they did the best that they could, but they weren't sure about how to take care of her like her doctors in Pittsburgh did. So we had to fly her back home. And that was tough, but we finally got her healthy from that point again, and had a really great couple months with her, and she seemed to really be doing well and to be growing and progressing and getting stronger. And then all of a sudden, she got a cold. I mean, it was literally a cold in the spring, and ended up in the ICU for almost a month and a half. She was in a medically induced coma for a while, and ended up having to get a trach placed after that hospital stay. And, things were just never normal or never good after that. And so we did get to bring her home for about a month and a half. And I knew something, mother's intuition, I knew something was not right with her. And so I called her doctors out in Pittsburgh, and they got all the lab work ordered. So I took her for labs. The labs were fine. And then 2 days later, just out of nowhere, but not really out of nowhere, really some scary stuff happened at home, and we had to call 911, and the hospital came, or the ambulance came. We rode in the helicopter out to Pittsburgh, and she didn't make it. She didn't make it through. So we lost her on October 17th of 2014, and just shy of her third birthday. And man, that was hard. So it's like 5 years, almost a little bit over 5 years. And it's still just incredibly difficult to think about, right? And I miss her terribly. But, the biggest part of all of this is that I know exactly where she's at. And I know that she is so much more part of my future than my past. But I know that you guys are followers of Jesus too. And I feel like, as followers of Jesus, it's so important that we acknowledge that sometimes life is really hard, right? Sometimes life can suck. and we're really quick to say, yeah, but God is good all the time, and all the time God is good, and He is, man, I know He is, but sometimes life is really, really hard. And so you don't really, you never can explain why things happen. Like, I'm not someone that will claim to have all of these revelations now 5 years later as to why it happened. I mean, I could see God work in it, absolutely. But I'll never claim to understand, why the bad things happen. But I think that, what's so important for me and for all of us is, when we're in the middle of those trials, when we're in the middle of the struggle, is to not get so caught up on the things that we don't know, right? But to focus on the things that we do know. And that the truth, is so important to cling to when you feel like you're drowning in all of the unknown, right? So I knew exactly where she was. I knew I was going to be with her again someday. And so that was my lifeline, like that was my raft. And so I spent as much time as I could researching religion, all religion in general. I read everything that I could get my hands on because I started to realize that, while I had a foundation of faith, which thank God that I had that. And I believe that I'm still here because of that. That saved my life. But the foundation wasn't enough anymore. And I realized that my faith my childhood faith, right, it didn't really evolve as I grew up as an adult. And some of the things that I learned as a child, my life as an adult, they didn't seem to match up, right? So my childhood faith wasn't holding up to the things I was experiencing in my adult life. And just as like our belief in Santa Claus needs to evolve as kids, where I feel so strongly that our belief in Jesus needs to evolve in the same. And, you're given all this information as a kid, if you're lucky enough, right? And it's great to grow up with all of that. But if you're not going to continue to evolve and to continue to study and continue to learn and to grow in your relationship with Jesus as an adult, it's not gonna hold up. So, I dove into all of that. I researched religion across the board and came out the other side of it, more sure than ever that Jesus is exactly who he claimed to be. And so then I started researching everything about heaven. And it just kind of opened my eyes to understanding that the worst day of my life, right? My daughter took her last breath in my arms. And the worst day of my life was truly the best of Brielle's life. And so holding on to that truth and picturing her in her eternal glory, she's died, but she's more alive now than she has ever been. And she's healed and she's full and she's able to walk and to play and to eat anything she wants to without any tubes connected to her. My heart started healing. So it was really incredible to see, the things of this earth grow strangely dim in the light of his glory and grace. My heart was on heaven because that's where my daughter was. Part of my heart was in heaven. And it really healed me to be to have such a kingdom mindset, right? To be focused on what's to come instead of getting so caught up in all of the things that are happening around me. I mean, life was really hard. It was so hard to watch Brielle suffer and be in and out of hospitals and in and out of procedures. But man, none of that was as hard as me trying to figure out my life without her. Until that switch came, right? Until I decided, like, I'm going to cling to the truth. I'm going to try to not let Satan have a seat at my table, right? He was, trying to get in my head all sorts of ways. And I just decided to focus on the things that I did know and to grow through all of that. And so, it's been 5 years and I still have bad days. Like I won't lie. There's certain dates, right? Things that are really difficult for me. Mother's Day is super hard, still to this day for me. And, her birthday and the anniversary of her going to heaven and all of these things are so hard. But man, the best is yet to come. And I fully believe that with everything that I am. And I'm trying to live that out. And I love, Chad, I love your mission of the 3 of 7. And I had no idea really how much we share in common about that. Like you have to invest in your soul and you have to care for it. Like you're not going to get strong by working out one day a week. You're not going to be able to go run an ultra by deciding you're going to jump on a treadmill for 20 minutes one day. And it's not going to make you stronger or healthier to eat one salad on a Monday. And, our souls are the same way. It's so important for us to remember that for them to get stronger, right? And I always encourage, my friends and the people that I'm around, like train for your trials before they happen, right? Let's have strong souls before we need to have strong souls. And so you're not going to carry your phone around if it's on like 1% battery life without feeling like you need to plug it in and charge it up. And I'm so convinced that, man, our souls are the same way, that we have to plug in, we have to charge them up, we have to be intentional about it. And so, all of these things kind of happened as I'm learning and I'm growing and I'm changing because of all of the difficult things that I've been through. And I discovered personally that, my body was made to be moved. And I went through so long without focusing on that at all. It was almost like I was all soul up front. Like I just needed I needed that part of my life to be stronger. And as that grew stronger, I started moving my body a little bit more, and, I'm getting healthier. I'm healing from this trauma, this tragedy. And I started, spinning, actually. We got a Peloton. I love it. Ad for Peloton. You can edit that out. But, but there's something to be said about challenging your body and strengthening your soul. And man, when the two of them happen together, right, you never feel as good as you're going to feel as you do when you're intentional about both of those things. So I noticed the positive change in my life. And I said to my husband, this could help a lot of people. I really feel like, combining the two of them, there's something to be said about that. So I decided to open up a small group fitness studio in my hometown and talk about God using somebody that I never in a million years thought I would have a fitness studio, right? Your life ends up not looking anything like you thought it was going to look like. But we opened up Strong Souls 2 years ago, and we do indoor cycling and group fitness. And, we listen to whatever music we want to listen to. And it's not like it's just us with a Bible, like pounding it on people's heads. But at the end of all of our classes, right, it's a little devotional, a time to strengthen our souls, a time to plug in, right, and to reconnect, and just always constantly bringing that up front for people. Like, how is your soul, right? If we don't stop and think about it, it kind of gets swept or pushed aside. The busier that we get, and it's just connecting. Like, look, you're here because you're making yourself a priority. To care for your body, that's a priority, but you should also make caring for your soul a priority too. And why not do them together? And I'm telling you, it's been incredible. Just personally, what it's done for me, right? Because going into Strong Souls, I was on all kinds of anti-anxiety medication, antidepressants, and I'm not on any of it now, praise God. And it's just, those endorphins come into play, and just constantly taking responsibility for my soul and to make it, better every single day has been just such a blessing. So I guess that's my big story in a quick little nutshell.
Yeah. April, can I ask you a question about
Absolutely.
back to right after Brielle passed away, did you give yourself time to grieve, or did you just immediately start?
Oh my goodness, yeah. No, I was a mess. I was a train wreck for a while. It was really, really hard. I did therapy twice a week for a couple months. But I it hurt, and it was very, very difficult. But I had a foundation of faith. I kind of knew, right, the things that I should start doing if I wanted to get through it, right? At my lowest point, I would have done anything to make the pain stop, right? Like my mind would be all over the place. Thoughts of suicide, just wanting to be with her, and all of the difficult things that you go through. Like, I was absolutely there. I was a mess. I'd say, solid for a while. And thank goodness my family was surrounding me and lifting me up and building me up. And I think, like, I'm so glad you asked that, right, too, because as, followers of Jesus, you know all of the things, right? And you have hope, but hurting with hope still hurts, right? And so it was really tough in the first couple months after, and man, it took me a while, but yeah.
So that's okay. That's okay though, to take time before you start pushing through everything. Gosh. Well,
yeah.
I had another question too. How did you and your husband, I can't imagine what this does to a marriage. How did you guys keep a bond through all this?
Yeah, so that was really important to us. And, statistically, the odds were stacked against us, right? Statistically, married couples that lose children end up getting a divorce. And, we committed to each other right after that, we lost her. We weren't going to lose us. And so we learned the hard way, I feel like, through her illness, that communication is so important. And so A lot of times for the hospital stays, my husband had to go back to work. So I was the one that was there, and we learned to communicate through all of that. So it was, me telling him, relaying to him what the doctor said, and making some really difficult decisions, right, via the phone or FaceTime. And so we learned through all of that. Brielle taught us that communicating and being open with our emotions was so important. And so we learned that through her. But it also, there was a really excellent pastor who invested in us right after it happened, who showed up on our doorstep the morning we got home from the hospital after she left, after she went to heaven. And he would meet with us a couple times and talk to us about how important it was for us to not hide our emotions from each other. Because, he wants to be strong for me. I want to be strong for him. And so that could have led to both of us bottling up the things that we were really feeling. And, I will say one of the things that I feel like really helped us through was, and still is, right, we pray together all the time, every day now before he goes to work. But before, was my favorite thing we did with Brielle at night. We would hold hands and we would all say a prayer together, and then never letting that go after she went to heaven. And for a while, it was us kneeling in front of her crib. And then for a while, it was us, before bed. But, fighting through that together with God. And I won't say we didn't have some rough patches, right? But, I'm so blessed. He's such an incredible guy and truly my best friend. And so I would say, the main thing was just never stop communicating, being open about everything that we're feeling. He didn't go to counseling, but he would come with me every now and then if I felt like I needed him to. It's a great question, but yeah, and it's just made us that much stronger today, honestly,
Yeah, I love how you talk about that Brielle taught you guys communication that you still use now. That's special. Well, I have one more question and I'll let him go. But our aunt lost a son, actually Chad's cousin, and it's something I always ask her, and I want to ask you because your situation was different. When people find out what happened to you guys and when you lost Brielle, what's an appropriate response? Like, how do we support you without? I never know how to respond, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I love that you're asking that. So first of all, I just praying for your aunt. Just not anything that you want to be part of a club, right? But
right.
There's nobody else that can really understand it. So my heart hurts for her. But I would say, the biggest thing for me is to please don't ignore it, right? Right after, what was really difficult for me was I think a lot of my friends didn't know what to do. And so they just stopped including us in stuff. And so they would, still get together and stuff, and all of their kids would get together and play and to not hurt my feelings or to not make me feel uncomfortable in a situation where there were just lots of children. They just kind of stopped inviting us. But that was really hard too, because, I didn't really know where I fit in anymore. And so then losing that was really difficult too. But, so just even if they say no, so if you're going through something, right, with a friend and it's new and they say no all the time, right, just keep inviting them, keep giving them the opportunity to say yes when they're ready. And then, I love talking about Brielle, and I know some people are nervous about bringing her up or just not sure. And sometimes I might cry, right? I know sometimes I tell a funny story and we'll laugh about it, but I love talking about her. So just making sure, I feel like it's so important for us, for as moms, right, to know that people aren't going to forget. Mm-hmm. And so just, hey, do you want to talk about her? Can you tell me, a funny Brielle story, or, I'm thinking about her today, just little stuff like that, just to let us know that our hearts aren't the only ones that remember and that long to see them. So I think that's super important.
Right. And that's Phyllis, our aunt. She talked about the same thing, that people shouldn't get uncomfortable if she's talking about her son and she starts to cry or she gets emotional. She's fine with it. And people should just roll with it. She says, and I feel like you and her have reached a point where you're healthy that you can do that. I think that's awesome.
Yeah, no, and April, again, thank you so much for the courage to share that story with us in that amount of detail. Your measure of faith that you possess, that you have been given, strengthens me to know that there's that level, that there's that measure of faith still existing in this world. It strengthens me so much. I can't imagine, I can't even begin to comprehend the heat of that furnace of adversity that you had to go through in that situation. So not only thank you for sharing your story, but thank you for sharing that measure of faith that you've been given, because I think it's encouraging for all of us that are Christians in the world today. And I've got so many questions. One of the questions that I had was early on in the story when Brielle first received her diagnosis of Lee's disease. You said you really at that point you focused on making every single moment special, or it sounds like really, to me it sounded like kind of time slowed down. All of a sudden you were focused on where you were standing that moment right then. Is that right? Because I feel like that's a rare thing to get to experience that as a human being living in today's society, to all of a sudden come to the realization of how valuable every single second, every single minute, every single hour actually is, and how much of a gift it is. And could you just speak a little to that? Does that resonate with you at all?
Yeah. I mean, and it's such a gift, right? So I said, looking back on all of the things that we've been through, there were so many gifts along the way that at the time did not feel like gifts at all. Felt like the furthest thing from a gift, but that was one of the biggest gifts. And it was just, things happen every day, right? None of us are guaranteed tomorrow. Mm-hmm. And so, for me, I knew, right? I wasn't guaranteed tomorrow. And all of us know, but do you really know, mm-hmm. right? I knew that, something could happen tomorrow, something could happen next week. And so, could I have gotten hung up on all of that and just been so focused on, I don't know, and all these things? But it was like God, showed me in that moment that, what you do have right now is this day with her. And what can you do in this day to make her feel like it's special, right? So we had all of these really cool little things that we did. And I would sleep in her room every Sunday, and she called it the sleep ozer. And it was just really exciting little things like that we were just so focused on what's really, really important. And not many parents get that gift, right? And that's exactly what it was. It was a gift, and it was just making sure every minute of every day was all about her. And I got to do that with her for almost 2.5 years, and incredible. I mean, it really was.
Yeah, and does that now carry on? I mean, that being a gift, I'm sure you're still conscious of it in your everyday life now. So what do you do intentionally now, or do you do intentional things now to really stay present and just maintain that type of mindset of being where your feet are?
Sure. I try my best, and it's more difficult, I would say now. Life has kind of gotten a little bit crazier because, when it was just she and I in the house and we weren't leaving, we weren't doing much, it was a lot easier. But my biggest thing now is, I guess, the things that would maybe, really flip somebody out or make somebody feel worked up. For me, it takes a lot for that to happen for me. And, I feel like, okay, I was talking with a friend, and we were talking about how we feel like, when we look at things and when we say, when we're 80 or when we're 90 or when we're at the gates of heaven, right, face to face with Jesus, is this going to matter? And so I might not, be as good at being just present and focused on the here and the now. But I feel like I've got a really great, my head is just really clear when it comes to what's going to matter long term, and to using that day to day, right, and to stay focused on the things that really do matter.
And to me, I've never thought about it that way, April. Never heard it put in those words, but man, that's a heck of a measuring stick right there. When you look at not only your day-to-day activities, the things that you say, your mission. When you say, okay, at the end, when I'm standing before my Creator, are these things that I'm doing right now going to matter at the end? I mean, that's a heck of a measuring stick right there. If you ever doubt if you ever doubt your mission, or you ever doubt what you're doing, that's a good question to ask. Is it going to matter when you're standing there at the very end? So I love that. That's solid wisdom, April. Go ahead, baby.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you about how you said right after her diagnosis as well, you said that you were trying to change the thoughts in your head. And I know we'd already talked about surrounding yourself with positivity, but I struggle with that. And I was curious what was your strategy there?
So I struggle with that too. Even still to this day, it's so hard. So, for me, I feel like my mind is always on. Like I have a really hard time shutting it off. And, there's certain things. Actually, I'm going to recommend a book. Levi Lusko wrote a book. It's called I Declare War. And it's all about declaring war from within. I wish I had this book back then. But one of my favorite parts on it, and he talks about how, when a bird is flying around your head, right, you can't really control that it's going to come, but you have the ability to not let it build a nest in your hair. Right. And so, for me, it was these thoughts that would come in. I would have to declare right away, I'm not going to accept that thought as my own. That thought is not from me. It's not from God. And I'm not going to declare it as my own. And sometimes I would even if I was alone or whatever, say it out loud. Like, I will not accept that thought as my own. That's not truth. That's not from God. And then I would replace it with something I knew to be true. Because for me, at the beginning, it was all this unknown. I didn't know enough about the disease. I didn't know how it was going to affect my daughter. It's different for every kid. I didn't know how we were going to afford hospital bills. I didn't know how we were going to afford me not working anymore. All of the unknowns. And a lot of the times you think about the thoughts that come into your mind are somewhat related to an unknown, right? But if we can call them out, and that was what was helped for me, and it was that exact line, I will not accept that thought as my own. And then replacing it with a truth, and a simple truth, like God is on his throne. His promises are true. The devil is a liar. My faith is the victor. I've got some skin in this game. And so it's kind of coming up with a truth of your own, something that's simple that you can write down and cling to. And then anytime something comes into your head that you don't want to be there, right, that's not welcome, call it out, send it away, and replace it with the truth. That was kind of what really helped me.
That's amazing. And what was the name of that book one more time?
It's called I Declare War by Levi Lusko. So my husband and we host a watch party. We call it a watch party on Sundays. Levi, have you ever heard of him?
No. Have you, babe?
Mm-mm.
Okay, so he's a pastor. You guys would love him, out of Montana. And he has a church called Fresh Life Church. And he lost a daughter to an asthma attack right before Christmas one year. And I found him as I was going through all this positivity stuff after losing Brielle, found him on YouTube randomly, listened to one of his sermons, found out that he lost a daughter. And so I just felt connected to him. I feel like he's one of my best friends. I've never met the guy, but so we host a watch party now on Sundays here. We rent out a space at the park locally, and we host a watch party. So we stream their services in, and he wrote this I Declare War book. I'm going to guess maybe 2 years ago, but man, it's so good. You got to check it out.
Thank you so much. All that is, that's helpful for me.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And I everything that you say it resonates so strongly with me, April. You're like you are like the picture of 3 of 7,
Yeah.
what it is all about, because all the stuff you've went over so many things within your story and the tactics that you kind of used and to get to the point you are now. And it's just so much, you talking about staying in the Word, intentionally praying with your husband and with yourself, and that's all that is nourishing your spirit. Then you talk about counterpunching those negative thoughts with truth, with real truth. That is, for me, that's the soul portion of it. That's taking control of your mind, will, and emotions, what's coming into your mind, what you're allowing to affect your mind and emotions. And then now with, Strong Souls, you've brought the body into it, and you've incorporated now that whole body, soul, spirit aspect. And gosh, it's been so strong and so natural for you. And it's just an amazing story. And one of the questions that I had, April, was I talk to a lot of people, or I have a lot of people reach out to me that are, going through an extreme trial, or, they're in a bad place, and they kind of reach that moment with their faith where it's just like they just feel like they don't have any faith left. Like, they don't know where to go from there. Did you ever have a moment like that at all, where you just felt like I just I just don't have the faith left? And if you did, how did you recover from that?
So totally. And I feel like I need to throw out a disclaimer, right? I'm a straight up train wreck. Like I'm a screwed up train wreck, right? That is saved by grace on grace up in this train wreck. So I want to make sure all y'all know I am a train wreck. But yeah, for sure. So, at the beginning, right, when, like I said, how I felt like my childhood faith didn't hold up to the things I was experiencing as an adult. That was the moment for me where it's like, okay, well, Jesus loves the little children. Well, I spent a lot of time in children's hospitals, and let me tell you, it did not feel like Jesus loved those little children. And, just certain things. And it was like, I grew up as a church kid, right? I could tell you all the different Bible stories, and I could rap you the books of the Bible if you wanted me to, but I didn't feel like I knew Jesus. I didn't feel like, my faith didn't evolve as I grew up. It was still strong, right? I still did all the things and checked all of the boxes and had this really big, long list of things that I knew I shouldn't do. Okay. But it was, that turning point for me where I got to do something or I'm going to break, right? I have faith of a mustard seed, right? But that was enough. And so instead of just, getting mad and shutting it all off and turning away, I was like, okay, God, if you are good, I want to know about it and I want to find out, and I'm going to do it the right way. I'm going to do the research on my own. I'm not going to just believe it because a pastor says it's true. I'm not going to believe it anymore because my mom and dad told me it was true. I needed to find out for myself. And so that's when I really started diving in and reading as much as I could get my hands on and researching. And I researched all religions, right? And it brought me out on the other side of it so much stronger. But I had moments, man, where I was like, this doesn't feel good. And all of the things that I've been taught, they're not adding up. Like, it's not feeling like I'm loved right now. God, you feel so far away from me. And if you're really as big as what you say you are and as powerful as what you claim to be, then where are you at right now? There were moments, you just screaming at the top of your lungs, angry. Like, I got mad at God. I never thought that, he didn't exist, or, I questioned it for sure. But I guess for me, it was more anger, right? Like, I was so mad that he was letting this happen to me in my life. But, brought it back to, like I said, just like, let's work through this. Let's kind of figure it out instead of just walking away, committing to, if there is a God who is all powerful and all knowing and created the universe, there's going to be so many things that me as a human, that I have to realize I don't necessarily need to know all of the things. right? And if you feel like you should be able to explain God and all of the things that he does, your God is way too small, right? He is bigger than any of us could ever imagine. And so there's going to be things that happen that we're just not going to understand and we're not going to explain. And so it sucks. And, that was so hard. And, life is really stinking hard sometimes, but man, he's better and he's bigger than all of that. And so, yeah, I went through it for sure. And I surely, and all of the other side of it, stronger.
And when you started, after you did your research, and you kind of decided, okay, I'm in this, I'm going to start working for this. When did you start getting a return on that emotionally, like on your relationship? Did it happen immediately or did it take a while of work?
Sure. So, I feel like, sometimes people are like, oh, I don't feel close to God. Well, it's not, I don't think, for me, it wasn't always a feeling, right? So it wasn't always like this, tingly goosebumps, this feeling. Like it was really, 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 really hard, for a while to feel that closeness. And even, still today, there's moments of my life where I don't feel it. I'm going to be honest, right? I don't feel it, but I keep working towards it. Right. So it's a constant for me still, emotional investment. Right. And that's really what it is. And so at the beginning, I do believe that God draws near to the brokenhearted. And so I think that, for me that it was, I feel like as I was seeking the truth, right, he was presenting it to me. I do feel that way. There was a crazy moment, right? I'm going to share this with you guys and the rest of your podcast family, right? But there was this crazy moment where I'm walking my dogs outside, and it was maybe like 6 months after we had lost Brielle. And so I'm walking my dogs and I'm just praying and I'm crying and I'm praying, and my neighbors are probably thinking I'm crazy, but I felt like God said to me all of a sudden, like, I didn't audibly hear anything, but I felt the spirit in my spirit that he was saying, like, you don't have to do this on your own. Like, you're not going to have to do this on your own. I'm with you. It's not your strength, right? It's mine. And so for so long, I think I was trying so hard to do the Christian things and to be who I felt like people needed me to be in that moment, going through it as a follower of Jesus, to be that strength and to show that strength. And it got to just be like a little bit draining, right? And so I'm praying and I'm crying and I'm praying, and I just felt him saying, like, you're not doing this on your own. And in your weakness, my strength is revealed. And so let's kind of do it together. And I think that, honestly, that was the big turning point for me. It was maybe like 6 months down the road of me researching and reading and praying and therapy and and antidepressants and anti-anxiety medications, right? So all of the things combined.
Well, the key word for me listening to you right now, April, is initiative. And one of the most beautiful things that God gave us as human beings is free will. And God expects you to take initiative. He expects you to make time for him. He expects you to seek him. And that's why his word says, knock and the door shall be opened. The knocking, that's the initiative. And that's what you took. And I think that's the most beautiful piece of advice that you could give to anyone that was in that place in their life where they just weren't feeling it. I guarantee you, if you asked most of those people, well, what kind of initiative are you taking right now? What are you giving to God? What are you doing to seek that closeness with him? Most of those people would be speechless. They wouldn't be able to answer that question. So the key word for me is initiative. And I've seen throughout your story, it's you taking charge of that free will, taking initiative, and then God has honored you and given you that measure of faith back tenfold. because of the initiative that you took. So that's just a powerful piece of advice. And thank you so much, April. And I want to ask you, what is your mission now, April?
Sure. So I feel like, my mission now is just to be able to help other people and to help basically anybody that'll give me a chance to talk, right? To help them to understand that, our souls are important. The real you, the inside you, the thing that actually matters, and the thing that when you're face to face, like we talked about with your maker, with the creator, right? That's what's important. And so how can you train your soul, right? How can you care for your soul? How can you invest in, right? In plugging into the things that matter before trials occur, right? Because if you haven't gone through anything difficult yet, chances are you're not going to make it out of this side of heaven without going through something. And so be proactive about it, right? Let's strengthen our souls daily. So when the trials do come, we're ready to go into them with a fire. That was just something that I learned probably the hard way a little bit. And so my mission now is just to make sure people acknowledge that our souls are important and that we have to care for them and that we have to be intentional about them. Just in the same way as we are with our bodies, right? I feel like that's important too. And we have to do both things, right? Care for your body and care for your soul.
I love how that you made that transition and you acknowledge that getting on your Peloton and riding like crazy actually helped with your grief. Like taking care of your body, like you said, it all goes hand in hand.
Well, and I think you experienced some of that in your journey through recovery, right, baby?
Definitely.
I mean, and that was a big transition for Brooke, and her recovery was when she started going to the gym and
exercise.
And that body soul aspect. I mean, you can't work on one without working on the other. I mean, that's some of the best prayer time I have is out deep into a 100-mile race when I'm praying out loud to God. To me, it's they're all intertwined.
Yep.
So
and April said earlier, the endorphins they do play a part, but there's so much more to it than that. I mean,
yeah, definitely. And you got a podcast coming out soon, right, April?
I hope so.
I hope so. Just go ahead and speak it. So what's it going to be called? What's the premise behind the idea for the show?
So we're going to call it "Life Can Suck, but You Don't Have to."
I love it.
Right?
I love it.
And so it's going to give voice to all of this. We're going to acknowledge that life can suck, right? Life can really suck, and it's okay to admit that. It's okay to acknowledge that. It's okay to give that some time, but that we don't have to suck, right? So that's the whole premise of it. I'm going to hopefully interview people who have gone through some really difficult things, but come out the other side of it stronger and better than ever. And hopefully it'll encourage some people and give some people tips and ideas of how to work through sucky things, or maybe just provide encouragement and support to people that are going through difficult things as well.
Oh my gosh, that podcast, you're so good at articulating what you're trying to say and the point you're trying to get across. That podcast is going to be awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much.
I have a feeling you're going to be very successful,
yes.
And we'll talk a little bit about podcasting gear after we get off the call here and get you set up with the right stuff, because I definitely want to be tuning into that show, and I can't wait till you get it up and running. And of course, we'll do everything on our end from 3 to 7 to help support you on that, April, and any future missions that you have. You've brought a lot of value to our listeners today. You've brought a lot of value to Brooke and I. Not only as individuals, but as a married couple, and a ton of wisdom. So thank you so much.
Yeah. And I wanted to end the podcast with, are you ready to end it pretty much?
Yeah.
I wanted to end it with like your favorite memory of Brielle, if you felt comfortable with that.
Awesome. I would love it. But let me just say, please, no judgment, right?
Right.
Judgment-free podcast.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
So, okay. Thank you so much, Brooke, for letting me do this, man. So, you know, as someone who spent a lot of time just being at home, right, we had to come up with lots of different games to play, right? So one of Mommy's favorite games to play was with Brielle we called it happy hour. So we would pretend like we were tasting wines or mixing up drinks or whatever. And then, so she would get evaluated by her occupational therapist and her physical therapist. So at an eval, one time, one of the ladies said to her, "Hey, Brielle, what's your favorite game to play?" And she says, "Happy hour." And they were like, "Oh, did she just say what I think she said?" I'm like, "Well, yeah, she said it." And they go, "Well, what do you like to drink, Brielle?" And she says, "Yine." And I would let her drink water out of a wine glass. And then they would say, "What does Mommy drink?" And she'd say, "Beer." And thankfully, the therapist did not call CYS on us.
Oh,
and she was not drinking wine, or I was not drinking real beer with her. But anyway, that was it's always like, it cracks me up every time I think about her saying happy hour.
Yeah, that's such an awesome memory, man.
That is. I love it. I love it. So,
you know what was really cool is that she started like speaking at like almost 8 months, right? She started saying words and putting sentences together so early. And so another gift that we get to look back on and realize is that we were able to have conversations with her. She passed away just shy of her 3rd birthday, but she started speaking at such a young age, which looking back, it's such a gift from God, such a blessing that, you know, we were able to talk with her and communicate with her and have all of these really great stories. And so I just have to say too, before we wrap it up, guys, just anytime I get the opportunity to share her story is such a blessing for me. And so just that you're willing to let me do that. I just need to say thank you so much for that.
well, it's an honor. It really is, April. When Jeffrey reached out to me and we talked about it, and, you know, just going back to those memories of Jeff and I when we were out in Chaffee and just praying together, that was a powerful thing for me and Jeff back then, to just pray together and bringing back those memories. It's just I've been looking forward to this interview for quite a while, so it's an honor, and thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, April. Very nice to meet you.
Yeah, thank you guys.
This is the 3 of 7 podcast. Nuff Said.
This podcast was produced by Your Social Gathering. We hope you enjoyed. If you are looking to increase your digital marketing presence or elevate your digital assets, check us out at yoursocialgathering.com.